This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
So my answer to going to college was join the Army. 1992, my life changed forever. PCS to Germany with my two boys and really try to take advantage of the opportunity to travel, learn another language, the culture. It was to me the dream coming true, that everything that I'd been going through was worth it, because I was seeing another part of the world that I wouldn't have had the opportunity if I hadn't been in the military. Planned on getting out in 2000. That was really kind of a part of a joy in my life, and getting married for the second time. And I looked forward to the future. Ended up kind of becoming disillusioned, and that was the whole housing bubble thing where the mortgage jumped from bank to bank to bank. My kids were counting on me to take care of them, to ask for that kind of help. What I've done to help other women is make sure that they know what their resources are. It's for a long time I didn't understand that my service in the military counted as a woman veteran, but nobody told me, hey Eva, you're a veteran too, until I had that light bulb moment and said, my service counted too. And I can tell you it's been a long road to learn how to dream again. The community was the solution, be it churches, be it nonprofits, be it veteran service organizations, or just people like myself. We are the resources. We are the solution to help keeping women off of the street, our women veterans housed and having the resources they need and not living in a car. Of the work that grows us as leaders for our second service after the military to serve other people in our communities.
Hey, Doug, how are you?
Hi, Eva, how are you?
Good. Welcome, everybody. This is the From Pain to Purpose radio show, and today is November 22nd, the year of our Lord, 2025. I have Doug Petersen with us, and I know that I had up. Go to the right chat. Here we go. Have your bio. So Doug Petersen, he's in the North Texas area. So that's how I'm pretty sure we've met in person, but we can't, neither of us can remember when and where that was. Remember, North Texas is a huge place, but Doug grew up on the East Coast and went to military college before joining the Army, and became a helicopter pilot, served as a medevac pilot in Vietnam. And his call sign is Dustoff 34, and we'll get more to what this whole Dustoff 34 means here in a little bit. But he's a decorated Vietnam veteran, and he flew life-saving missions under fire, rescuing hundreds of wounded soldiers and civilians from the battlefield. His military career spans over 20 years, was an Army aviator, 2 tours in Germany, uh, flew on several aircraft, including the Huey, the Kiowa, the Black Hawk, C-12, and U-21, and was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, which is Congress's highest civilian honor, alongside many other military decorations. And, ever since his military retirement, he has dedicated 25 years to the financial services industry, helping military families build their financial security. And he's an award-winning author of 6 inspirational books. And then the latest work which is the whole reason why I wanted to make sure that we had Doug on, is about his new book called Call Sign Dustoff 34, Hovering Between Life and Death. And it offers his powerful and deeply personal account of his personal experiences flying medevac missions during Vietnam. And so welcome to the show, Doug. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
So you have been quite the busy beaver. I've been watching your social media, sir. And just before coming on the show, you said you've only had 2 days off in the last 2 weeks because you have been quite the busy beaver. But before we jump into that, let's kind of start into what your training was. Your bio says that you went to military school before joining the Army. So where did you go?
Well, right out of high school, I went on to a military prep school before going on to college. And that just kind of introduced me into the military lifestyle, even though I grew up in Virginia Beach, which was a big Navy town.
Right.
So I was familiar with the Navy side and those sorts of things, but it wasn't, the Navy really wasn't of interest to me. So I went to this military prep school for a year and did pretty well there academically, and then applied to go to Virginia Military Institute. And so I was accepted there and started my college career in 1967 at Virginia Military Institute. Again, I fell in love with the military aspect of it. It was the discipline and the respect and the core, and it was all of those, the camaraderie that we had as freshmen, all doing the same things. And it was a tough year. Well, academically, I wasn't blowing my socks off, so to speak. And so I had to, I came up to a decision after a year and a half of VMI. I made a decision to go join the Army. Now, the Army at that time in the late 60s had a program called High School to Flight School. So if you had a high school diploma, could pass the flight aptitude test and a flight physical, then the Army would accept you to go into flight school. Well, while I was at VMI, we're talking 1967, 1968, things were happening in Vietnam, though I didn't get to see very much of the news. But what little I did see was Tet of 68 in Vietnam was a huge campaign, and it really was significant time during that war. I don't remember whether I just saw the helicopters and the missions that they were doing on the news or whatever. But anyway, it sparked an interest. And since the academics weren't doing so good, I thought, well, maybe this is something that I could do. And so I decided to leave the school and join the Army, specifically to fly helicopters for the Army. So that's how I got to raising my right hand and taking my oath. in 1969.
And that was before, or actually just during Vietnam was starting about then, right?
Well, actually, Vietnam started in 1962.
Oh, that's
The
right.
con-
Sorry.
and it went into 1973. So it was an 11-year war, which we'll kind of talk a little bit about a little bit more. But so it was about midway, or a little beyond midway. So things were still happening. I mean, things were still pretty active in Vietnam. So it wasn't it wasn't on the wind down, so to speak.
Right. Still pretty active. Um, so what was did you have any fears about going though?
Well, here I am, 21 years old, and uh, I don't remember being fearful or anxious, or I just had this burning desire to go fly helicopters, and that's so I don't remember even uh, when I did my first interview before joining. The part of the in processing, you had to go before a field officer board, and one of the questions was, you know where you're going after you finish flight school? And I said yes. And it just didn't dawn on me. I'm invincible at 21 years old, as many 21 years old believe they are. So
I know that feeling. My mom was worried about me going to Desert Storm, and I was like,
mm,
"It's okay. God's got my back." I had no
yeah,
fear at all either.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember having any concerns.
Did I'm just curious, did you have a sense of faith at that time? And I know haven't talked about faith before.
Uh,
I'm surprised
well,
you use this for this topic, but
Well, certainly I had a belief in a higher power, which I happen to call God, but I wasn't a religious person. I didn't attend church uh, frequently, while at the prep school, and I was going to Episcopal church, and so I did have some of those things. I was, the acolyte for the church services during some in high school and some in the prep school. So I did have a belief, and I did have a spiritual component, uh, but I didn't. As I've said at other places, I didn't have a reliance on a higher power. I didn't have I had a belief, but I thought I was just doing fine on my own,
right.
so to speak.
That makes sense. I get it. All right. So, what made you want to write at all? You have 6 books. So, what made you want to write?
Well, the first six books, as you mentioned in the bio, had to do with an inspirational message. And each of those messages is really just a daily read for a specific day. The last 3 books were 369 thoughts of the day, so to speak. They were focused primarily on one theme, usually one core value that we would focus on. And this all was perpetuated from my second career after I retired from the Army. I was in the finance services industry, and this company that I was working for had a program started called Higher Ground by a Canadian named Lance Secretan, Dr. Lance Secretan. And he had his basis on some core values. And I really was quite taken at this 5-day retreat, that I was really inspired that I started writing. And so I started sending little emails to my fellow attendees. And as they would read these, and they would get inspired, and we would chat. And so someone said, well, you ought to put these in a book. And I blew that off for probably about a year. So then I said, okay, I'll self-publish a small book. And then, of course, I continued to do all these emails. And as the emails continued to grow, it grew into 6 books. So I mean,
Wow.
so those were just really a compilation of emails over periods of time. Now, the last three books are not only are they in paperback form, but there's also ebook versions of those. And it's just, you don't have to read cover to cover. It's because each day is different and it's not linked to the previous day or the next day. So you can just pick up the book and look for November the 22nd and see whatever it says. And then that's the message of the day. So,
Okay. Well, cool. And I did drop your Amazon store that has all of the books. I put
mhm.
that out there. So for folks, y'all can go look up Doug Petersen in Amazon store, and you got all 7
Yeah,
books listed in there. I haven't
yep.
even looked to see if my 2 are in there, even though it's the same book but published twice because I added more. But I haven't even done that for my own book. That's horrible. What was the biggest challenge, do you think? I mean, I love hearing about people who have, decided to become an author. What was the biggest challenge, do you think, in writing? Because I know for me, part of it has been the vulnerability journey side of
Mhm,
things
mhm,
and not sugarcoating things, right?
mhm,
Because people need to see some of the vulnerability
mhm,
side that
mhm,
they
mhm.
aren't going through trials by themselves. But if we're sugarcoating things, then they are not, um, they don't know that they can get through the journey too if we're sugarcoating our own responses.
Well, I think the challenge for me was putting pen to paper. The challenge was getting started and just going and committing to it and getting it done.
Mhm.
But with the emails as a background or as a starting point, that made that challenge a little easier. I Since these are relatively short, they're only a single page typically. Very few of them go into 2 pages in the book. So each one is just, it's, a few hundred words on a page. So it was really pretty easy. It wasn't like a novel where you had to build characters and scenes
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, which I probably would have been very poor at doing. This was just this was just taking a thought, let's say the core value of authenticity, for example, and just building on how we remove our mask to be authentic. We can't pretend to be somebody we're not.
Oh, for
So,
sure.
but sadly, many of us go around wearing a mask, being someone we're not. When we look inside, we see somebody completely different. So I would explore on those, and those were some of, these were pretty spontaneous when I would write them, and so the grammar and and the spellings are not always perfect, and that's okay. I accept that. Those Some readers haven't accepted that, and that's their problem and not mine.
Hey, you were being your authentic self, right?
Absolutely,
So,
yes.
yeah, vulnerabilities and all, we make mistakes. And if that's the worst that you do for grammar or misspelling,
Yeah.
wow, what is it? Even the Bible says, let he cast the first stone. Okay, so we'll see
Yeah.
how that flies for folks. Um, all right, so let's move into what's the next part that you want to talk about? Just
Well, certainly on the military side, because we've kind of jumped into my retirement side. So we regress back to starting flight school and
yeah.
that kind of going back over to Fort Polk, Louisiana, is where I took my basic training. Lovely Fort Polk in May is so nice. Uh, I say facetiously.
I've
Uh,
heard.
and so going on to Fort Walters, Texas to begin the initial flight training for 5 months. That was really a lot of fun. I mean, you've got
I
so
don't think
many.
I've heard of Fort Walters. Where is that one at?
It's in Mineral Wells, Texas.
Okay.
So it's just about 40 miles west of where I am actually right now. So, we start out there and you've got thousands of these little helicopters, it seems like, all buzzing around the county with a bunch of students, bunch of 20-year-olds with a helicopter strapped to their back and going out and just having a blast. So so after Fort Walters goes Fort Rucker for advanced helicopter training, and then that completes flight school. I was a warrant officer candidate, so I was in the warrant officer program. Graduated, was promoted to the rank of W1, was awarded my aviator badge, and then 30 days leave, and then off to Vietnam. So,
Wow. Were you married at the time?
no, no,
No.
no.
Did you have a girlfriend waiting back
Yeah,
home?
that kind of, yeah. So, yeah, not my current wife that of 52 years,
Okay.
but not her. But I mean, she came after I got back.
Okay.
So
But wow, for being married 52 years, that is amazing though.
yeah,
Congratulations.
and I had nothing to do with that. That's all her. She's the angel in this.
Uh, so
She,
you went to Rucker and then you went to Vietnam then?
yeah, at Rucker, the funny thing, and I mentioned it in my book, that the last few weeks of training at Fort Rucker, I was flying a gunship. And so I was flying a B model Huey with 2.75-inch rockets, or twin miniguns, or 40 millimeter grenade launchers, or whatever the case may be. And so, I mean, I was just going downrange, blowing up deuce and a halves and whatever else was down there to shoot at. So I was
Right.
just having, again, you give this 20-year-old a helicopter now with some guns on it, and I was just having a blast. Just,
So in
it
some
was a
ways
lot
it
of
was
fun.
like it was you were living a video game in some
Yeah,
ways.
before video games.
Right, before video games, you got to blow it up for real.
Yeah,
And not in war, but I
right,
mean, later in war, but just even the pretend side of it for
right.
training, it was like a living video game without it
Yeah,
being a video game itself.
yeah, exactly. And so it was a lot of fun to go do that. Again, as a kid, um,
Oh, sure.
it was just a lot of fun. So anyway, so after 30 days and off to Vietnam, I go to I land at Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base just outside of Saigon, and I get on a bus and was taken over to the 90th Replacement Battalion, where there's an indoctrination period of 3 days where you start your malaria pill regiment. So you take your big orange pill every day, and you learn a little bit about the culture and so forth and so on. And then they give you your assignment. Well, when I came up to the third day, they said, Mr. Petersen, you're going to go fly a Dustoff. And I said, no, time out. I'm a gunship guy. And they said, no, you're a Dustoff guy. And so I was assigned to a medical evacuation helicopter company, which happened to be like 100 yards away from where the 90th Replacement Battalion was. So I didn't have to go very far to get to my new assignment. And little did I know at the time how rewarding that assignment would be over being a gunship pilot.
Really? How so?
Well, here as a medical evacuation helicopter unit, we were picking up the injured and taking them to medical facilities for treatment. The life-saving reward of that mission far exceeded, in my opinion, the blowing things up.
Right.
So it really was, we estimate that each crew during their 1 year tour probably evacuated close to 1,300 individuals. each
Wow.
crew. Crew being two pilots, a crew chief, and a medic. So collectively, though we didn't fly all the same guys all the time, we rotated around. We estimate, just based on the number of missions and so forth, that about 1,300 patients would be, each crew would have evacuated, which is significant. But I want to get into that a little bit more detail a little bit later.
Okay.
But uh, but that's so much more rewarding than a the kill count. How many uh, enemy did I kill with my rockets?
Oh, right. Because
So
it's
I
the
mean,
whole flip. It's flipping the
yeah,
narrative. How many
yeah,
people you're
yeah,
saving
yeah,
versus the reverse.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So that was so I say that's why this mission, and I think God had a hand in that. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but certainly I do believe that that was what I was supposed to do. And so
Wow.
I loved it.
That's incredible. So is that what dust off means? I mean, explain
Yeah.
what does dust off mean?
Okay. Dustoff is a call sign for the aeromedical evacuation helicopters. Uh, Back in the early 60s during the war, missions had specific names to them. And one of the medical missions that came in, they called it Dustoff. Well, the commander of the Dustoff unit then said, from this point forward, all medical evacuation missions would be called Dustoff.
Okay.
So, and that is being used today in the active duty Army. They still call the aeromedical evacuation mission Dustoff.
Oh,
They don't call it medevac. Call it Dustoff. So that name has continued on through from early 60s to where it is today. So the Dustoff was a call sign, and we had, as I mentioned, we had a crew of four. We had two pilots. One of them was designated as the aircraft commander, the person in charge.
mm-hmm.
Another co-pilot or pilot, a crew chief, and a medic. Now, since we were a flying ambulance, so to speak, we were not armed, so we didn't have any door guns.
Right.
We didn't have any rocket pods or any of that sort. I had a 38 revolver, 4-inch barrel, which is ridiculously inaccurate when shooting at anything. But our weapons that we had on board were strictly for the patient's protection. We were only in a defensive mode. Even if we were to see the enemy, we were not permitted to engage the enemy in an offensive manner.
Right.
It's only in a defensive manner, and this is the Geneva Convention.
Yep.
So we had these big red and crosses on the sides of our helicopter, and on the nose of the helicopter, and on the bottom of the helicopter, and it was supposed to be that the enemy would see this and know that, well, according to the Geneva Convention, you can't shoot at those red crosses. Well,
Right. Right. That
uh,
doesn't mean anything.
no, they're
Right.
they're excellent aiming points.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so that's a great target that you can point your gun at. So obviously we took a lot of injuries, I mean, a lot of enemy fire, only because either they were ignorant of the Geneva Convention or they didn't choose to abide by it.
Right.
So that was the crew, and that's what we did. I was shot down twice, um, and so we can get into that here in a little bit too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we were doing. That's what the dust off is. And then 34 was my call sign. So after I made aircraft commander, after about 3 months, then we selected a number. I was in the third platoon of this company, And so the 3rd platoon then would have designations 1 through 6, or I mean 1 through 9,
Mhm.
where you would get, or 0 to 9. So I could take one of the available numbers, and
Right.
my number happened to be 3-4. So I
Gotcha.
was dust off 3-4 from that point on until I left country. So
That's
so
an interesting, because in some ways you become a number. You're not Doug or Peterson, right? You are just off 34. How
yeah.
did, even just that, I'm just wondering, did that make you feel any certain way that you were a number and not, Warrant Officer Peterson?
No.
I don't know if that's
Act,
a redundant question to ask, but
well, no. I mean, I felt proud of that number because if it was one, it showed that I had achieved an aircraft commander status,
okay,
which means that you're now responsible for the safety of your crew.
right.
And so that kind of gives you a little, a little pride in that. And, and certainly we wouldn't, all the other units, they all had call signs, and we never used any personal names anyway. So
Right, right.
it was just a way to do that. I didn't ever consider it being derogatory, being not called Peterson or being Doug. I mean, we did certainly when we were not flying. This was a call sign that we would only use when we would be
When you're
flying
flying on the
missions. Yeah,
flying,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. So what's the next part of your story then?
Well, there's a number of different things that transpired. I mentioned that I got shot down twice, and I don't recall too much about the first time because I was relatively uh, new in country. I wasn't an aircraft commander. I was a Peter pilot.
Hmm.
I just remember the aircraft commander. We got shot up. The engine was getting ready to quit. We had to land. We had to get out of the helicopter, climb into another helicopter, and be taken back to home base. And so it's really kind of a blur. It really didn't take too much about it. Now, the second time, which I do a TEDx talk down in San Antonio, which is a 6-minute video on YouTube that describes the second time that I was shot down, but I was the aircraft commander on that mission. And it was, as I mentioned in the video, as soon as we started taking enemy fire, uh, the the mission changed. The mission originally was to pick up a wounded American soldier who
Hmm.
was needed to be taken to a hospital. But as soon as we started taking enemy fire and we started taking hits, the mission changed from it to saving my crew.
Right.
Now my responsibility changed to making sure that the 4 of us survived
Yeah.
and got out. And so that's how that, I mean, it changes in a microsecond. As soon as you start doing that, you have to change your mindset and start doing things a little different. So I talk about it in pretty good detail in the video, in the TED talk, and uh, it gets into it where we landed and we were picked up about an hour later. So we didn't have to do any survival, escape, and evasion. We didn't have to do any of that. We were surrounded by good guys pretty quickly, had other helicopters going around us. So we felt relatively secure. The aircraft took about 25 hits. We were leaking engine oil and transmission fluids. And so the engine was going to quit pretty soon.
Hmm.
I just didn't know when. And
Right.
so we had to get to the ground as quick as we could. I'd rather have a controlled landing than crashing through the triple canopy jungle where we were hovering over. So
I could
that,
imagine. I would think that just like with the captain that flew the airplane that had to land, in New York City, that your brain it has to be lightning fire to think and make that transition,
yep,
because it does mean life or death. You,
yep,
you can't, all the training in the world, suddenly comes into play, and you've got to be able to pop it in and use it in the appropriate manner to make
right,
sure that you take care of not just yourself but everybody else.
right, right,
So, I become familiar with not just the fight or flight, but there's fear and freeze. You have to you have to stay in that fight mode, to be able to get everybody to fly, to the flight mechanism, because you certainly don't want fear to engage or
right.
frozen to engage, because that could mean a whole different consequence of everything.
And I think that pilots are really good at compartmentalizing things.
Hmm.
The when I said that the mission then changed in an instant, that little that's now the new compartment.
Yeah,
The mission of getting the soldier back to the hospital was one compartment. We've moved compartments to another one. I can't focus on that one anymore. I have to focus on this one now. And then once that's resolved, then we can go into another. So the fear of and being scared doesn't come into play because it's not one of the compartments
yeah.
at the time. I mean,
You
it's
can't activate that.
yeah.
It's you gotta move mountains then.
And so I leave that story, leave the TEDx talk with them picking us up and bringing us back to the home base. Since TED dictates how much time you have, I was only given 6 minutes to share that story.
Yeah.
And they said, don't go over. They can go under, but don't go over. So in 6 minutes, so I get to that point, and what I don't get to do, and when I do my presentations and speaking, and I show my video, and then I come back up on the stage, and I said, well, that was exciting, and so I said, but now let's talk about the Paul Harvey, the rest of the story.
Right.
And so I get to share then that after we were taken back to the home base, I got another helicopter and another crew, and we went back to get the guy because the guy still needs to be picked up.
Wow. So you didn't
So
even
we
get to get the guy. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. I thought that you had got the guy, and
no.
oh wow. So you
So
still had to face those, in some ways you have to face some fears of, man, we still got to go get the guy. We still have to
right,
fulfill the mission.
right. We still have to do the mission. The
Yeah,
mission is not complete.
right.
And so that's what I don't get to share in the TED Talk. But I get to share that when I do my presentations. I get to share the Paul Harvey, the rest of the story is that we went back and now I know a little bit about what's going on. Certainly the bad guys are closer than we anticipated.
Yeah,
And,
because I had
and
extra time to
so, but we did it without any other incidents. We picked the guy up, we got him to a hospital and so forth. So yeah, that I don't get to share that piece of that story uh, unless I'm giving my one of my presentations. So
Did you ever get to reconnect with that guy?
I have no idea who he is.
Oh, that would be
So,
wild if you got to do that,
yeah,
though.
well, there is a funny story to that, but before I get to that, we never knew the names or anything about the patients we got on board.
Right.
Our job was to land, get the injured on board as quickly as we could, and quickly get to a medical facility so they could be treated. We don't, they didn't know who we were, and we don't know who they are,
Yeah.
which is sad. I was recently at the Vietnam Memorial, the wall.
Hmm.
And when I was at the wall this time, I was there on Friday or Thursday of last week. And I was looking at two of my flight school classmates who are on the wall that didn't come home. But I looked at the names. It's a very tall panel, and all these names are there. And it didn't dawn, and I've been to the wall a number of times, but it dawned on me this time that the names that were behind me are, there's some on there that flew in my helicopter.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are, and they don't know
Right.
who I was. But it is with certainty that I say that some of the people that were behind me on that wall in that photo that I took, that they flew on my helicopter. And it's very humbling
Sure.
and very sobering to come to that realization. So it's really it was a powerful moment when I was there.
I bet. I have a friend of mine. She, um, in Iraq and Afghanistan, she was the evac coordinator. So once people got brought to the hospital,
Mhm.
she was the evac coordinator to get them to Landstuhl
Mhm.
or wherever they
Mhm.
were being
Mhm.
sent to.
Mhm.
And she has a certain, I think, a certain amount of PTS from that, just
Sure.
knowing that churn of people that she was responsible for and not necessarily knowing the results of
Right.
the efforts. I
Right.
could imagine that's probably a certain amount of some of what you have felt too. That you just don't
Yeah.
know the rest of the Paul Harvey story on their stories.
Right. Yeah.
Does does that leave you with, some of that, the, I want to say, mental, emotional, and spiritual pain side that, even so many years later, that
Mhm.
how do you deal with recognizing that connection and being able to help somebody else?
Well, certainly even though the pilots are up front and
Hmm.
their job is to safely maneuver the aircraft from the pickup zone to a medical facility. I mean, that was our part of our job. But when you look back into the cargo area where the medics and the crew chiefs are working, trying to save these lives of soldiers that don't have legs, or they don't have an arm, or they half their face is gone, or whatever the case may, you cannot erase that memory.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that is the atrocities and the horror of war we got to witness. It was just gut wrenching to see that. And, I don't know that I appreciated what we were doing at that time as much as I do today,
Yeah.
because I've certainly matured over periods of time. But that impact and seeing that, and certainly carried on through some mental anguishes upon coming back to the States. No, I didn't, you know, PTS was not even an acronym
Yeah.
from Vietnam.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've
you
heard
know,
battle fatigue and
yeah,
any number of
whatever.
other names.
Yeah,
Yeah.
World War II had shell shock. I mean,
Yeah.
that was their uh, type thing from seeing that kind of mental situation. But Vietnam PTS had not surfaced until later in conflicts in Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan, and so forth. So that's when really the PTS really came up. Did the Vietnam veterans suffer PTS? Absolutely.
Absolutely. My uncle was in Vietnam. He came back physically, but mentally he was, apparently
Yeah.
not the same person.
Right.
He pretty much lived his life as what I knew as a hobo. He was a homeless veteran. And I think I was the last person that saw him, but I didn't know that it was him in Austin. And he froze to death in Austin. He was living in his car, but he had I had. But this was before I was leaving to go active duty to join and go to Saudi. I switched from reserves to active duty in 1990, and my uncle was living in his car in Austin, Texas. Well, my friends from college were saying goodbye to me down there off of 6th Street. So they were walking me to my car, and this man ran across and he said, "Oh man, I just wanted to give you a hug." I screamed because I didn't know this, was not expecting, somebody, a homeless man, to come over and want to give me a hug. So that,
Right.
but I remember I remember growing up that he would come to my parents' house, and mom would wash his clothes, dad would help him get it cleaned up, mom would, cut his hair, shave him and everything, and he'd last a couple of weeks and then he would hit the road again. So
Well, I know for certain that several of the pilots that I flew with suffered significant post-traumatic stress.
yeah,
They were not the same, and they didn't handle it well. I mean, I don't recall anybody committing suicide, but certainly they didn't have the quality of life that they should have
do
when
you
they
think
came
that
back.
the support network part of that
Well, I mean,
healing side
certainly
of it?
then that we didn't have it.
Yeah, but family, or they weren't?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak to the family situation, but
Yeah,
I just know that when I've seen them before, I mean, when I've seen them after we got back and heard stories from others that who knew them, they were just not the same person, and it's sad.
I don't
Uh,
know that anybody, even probably with my going to Desert Storm, even though it was such a significantly shorter war, I don't know that any of us come back the same. You know, I mean, even
yeah,
physically, I didn't come back the same because we
right.
had all the Gulf War injury stuff that we have, endured since then.
Well, I can say that I did not get injured physically
So that's a
during my
blessing.
time. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, certainly they had the opportunity, but I wasn't wounded at all. So I take that all day long.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But one of the other things that I want to mention, we talked briefly about the Congressional Gold Medal
Yes.
that was recently awarded, and I had a role in that, and I want to just kind of share some thoughts on that.
Okay.
Uh, so as I mentioned, the Vietnam War was 11 years long.
Right.
And during that 11 years, there were about 1,400 pilots. So, and there were about 2,000 crew chiefs and medics. So the total medevac or Dustoff group was about 3,400 spread out over 11 years. Of the pilots, there were 90 were killed and 380 were injured out of the 1,400.
Not bad
Of
odds if I'm just thinking math wise, that's yeah, they've done pretty well.
and then the crew chiefs and medics, about a 33% were killed or injured. So we're talking 650 out of the 2,000. But so the medical evacuation or Dustoff was a single ship all by themselves. They didn't have anybody flying with them. There was just one helicopter, one crew, day, night, good weather, bad weather, didn't make any difference, out there trying to save lives.
Mm.
And so that's what we were doing. And so during this 11-year period that we flew 496,000 Dustoff missions.
Wow.
The 3,400, keep that number in mind, the 3,400 flew nearly 500,000 missions.
Wow.
Of the 500,000 missions, we evacuated 900,000 patients.
Almost a million.
Okay, 3,400, 900,000. So the point that I make with that and stress with this ratio of 3,400 versus 900, you think that that's a significant impact. But what I've done before, and I'll tie this back in a minute to the Congressional Gold Medal. Of the 900,000, let's just focus on one of those guys that came home.
Mm-hmm.
He got to have a family.
Right.
Who had a family.
Yep.
So the 3,400 didn't just impact 900,000. The 3,400 impacted multi-millions.
Yeah.
And it's just not Americans. It's the Koreans because the Koreans were in there with us. The Australians, the New Zealanders, the Vietnamese, the Vietnamese civilians, the enemy, the North Vietnamese army, we picked up. So it's a wide, broad spectrum of multi-millions that are now walking around today because of something the 3,400 did. So the Congressional Gold Medal is we already talked about, it was the highest civilian award Congress can bestow on an individual or a group of individuals. And Senator John Cornyn of Texas had introduced the bill into the Senate about 9 years ago. And after he went in there, it immediately went to committee. And in order to come out of committee, you had to have 2/3 co-sponsors. Well, it would never get any support. We couldn't get it out of committee. So it languished in Congress for 9 years. Then the Vietnam Dustoff Association, which I am a board member of, we said, what can we do to help this for the 3,400?
Right.
What can we do? And so we got together about a group of about 13 of us, and we said, what can we do? And so we contacted, or our leadership contacted, a law firm in Washington, and we said, we need your help to get this Congressional Gold Medal. Are you willing to do that on a pro bono basis? And they said yes. And so a group of about 12 or 13 of us flew to Washington on our own dime, and with this law firm, walked the halls of Congress, generating support for this bill. So we did that 2 years ago in November of 2 years back. And so we started out with 90 in the House. And by the time we're finished, we were about 115. So we needed 266
Yeah.
to get it out of committee. So then we went back again in March, and we did the same thing. We walked the halls of Congress, and I shared that story of that one individual and having a family and all that. And so finally,
Because they're all constituents across the country. They got to
Yes.
think about it. They're all
Yeah.
constituents.
So we made the third trip in June of last year. And finally, we were able to get the Senate to move it out of, got enough co-sponsors in the Senate side to move it out of committee and then onto the floor to be passed. Then we needed the House. And so we were still short in the House, and we continued to work. And once we came back from Washington, we would do emails and phone calls and so forth. So in September of last year, the president signed into law the Dustoff crew members of the Vietnam War Congressional Gold Medal Act, which means that every Dustoff and medevac crew member is now a recipient of the Congressional Gold Medal.
That's awesome.
So that is pretty awesome. So what does that mean? So now that's been 15 months ago. The U.S. Mint has yet to design the coin. So we're waiting on the Mint to finish designing the coin, and we expect that to be first quarter of next year. And then once it's approved by the Secretary of the Treasury and the Secretary of War, then we'll move to go into production, and they mint one coin. So this one medal, the one coin, will go into the museum down at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, in San Antonio. And then probably first quarter of 27, there will be some ceremony in the Capitol recognizing the Dustoff crew members. But it takes that long for it to give. Now, we are not given one of these coins. Even though we're in the group, if we want one, we can purchase one, a replica of it, for $200.
Wow.
And so
that's not cheap by any means.
No, I mean, certainly I will purchase one as soon as the one becomes available.
Oh, for sure.
But that's just the sad part of this. And of the 3,400 that we talk about, we estimate there's about 800 still living. The rest are not living with us anymore, and we're losing them, daily, or it seems like. So
right. Well, that's a great number still left, though. But we do need to start closing up, and I have I wanted to quickly share the screen so people can see your new book that is out, and it's Dustoff 34. The link is out there also in the chat. I will make sure I share that link out, after the show as well. And I was I have another image. I have some guests coming up and wanted to be able to cover that. For some reason, everything. I'm working on my laptop, guys, so I will get that shared out. I had some technical issues before the show. Everything just was, I'm still recovering from being out of town last week, but and I have an echo for some reason too. So my son, Joshua Bailey, is going to be a guest on my show next week. He's my second oldest son. On the 29th, it is also his birthday. And his dad was a veteran as well. He's no longer with us and since 2014, but I wanted to get him on. I have a number of other great guests that are coming on as well. Joe Bulldog Adcox on December 6th, David Morrow on December 13th. And I'm having a brain cramp. I know I have a guest on the 20th, and for some reason I'm brain cramping. Brian Sims is December 27th, Samantha Jean Jasso, January 3rd, and January 10th is Gerald Bennett and Ricky Ritchie. So I have a lot of great guests coming up. And so anyways, thank you so much for joining me, Doug. And we'll get all these. Yeah, we'll be getting all the links shared out for everybody, and you have a very happy Thanksgiving too.
You as well. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.